This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
Our conversations today open up with Nigeria's inflation rate for the month of February, which has dropped to 23.18%, according to the figures published by the National Bureau of Statistics, the NBS. Now, this figure records a second consecutive drop following the NBS changing its calculation methodology. A month-on-month comparison shows that the average prices of food fell by 1.67%, suggesting that food is becoming cheaper. For more analysis on this, I'm joined by Samuel Oyekomi, a financial analyst and researcher at Northern Berger. Mr. Oyekomi, good morning, and thank you for joining us on the conversation.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Can you give us your reactions to the latest inflation figures?
Well, I think the market, alongside myself, expected a decline. So coming from the rebasing and then a number of things that also happened in the month of February. So if you look at inflation is a year-on-year base, right? So you compare February 2025, 2024, and then when you check 2024 February, you see that headline inflation touched at that point about 31.7 from less than 30%. So just mere looking at that significant surge and considering that there was no significant event that could trigger a resurgence in terms of inflation in the month of February this year, we expected some base effects there and for there to be a decline. And then looking at the month of February, we had stable exchange rate, petrol prices, which has been one of the main drivers of inflation in recent time, has also declined slightly, which we would expect to impact transportation costs. Some food prices have also seen declines in the month of February, although most significantly was in the month of March, but at least in February we also saw some of those. Looking at those, tying them together, we would expect that inflation was supposed to slow down, albeit marginally, but yeah, slow.
All right. The federal government insists that importation is not the reason for the drop in food prices. Is there anything from the data that could actually explain the decrease?
Yes. So when you look at the numbers, right, you see that food inflation particularly decreased from 26.1 to 23.51%. And then if you realize, remember from late last year, we had issues around harvesting, the planting season and whatnot that have impacted food prices in major areas of the country. So we have seen a slowdown in that price. And it doesn't mean that food prices have declined to their original levels. But what it means is that from the highs that we experienced at some point last year, we're beginning to see a moderation from those prices, and that's what you see reflected here. But looking at the other areas in terms of core inflation, you see that those were pretty much high. They increased compared to the previous month. The major driver of the decline that we saw in the month of February was particularly food. And then you can relate that to the harvesting season. There could also be a part contribution from importation of food items, but I'd say mostly from the local part.
So the headline inflation as a whole has now seen a consistent decline for 2 straight months. Are there any measures that indicate that we can sustain this trend of declining inflation?
I wouldn't say consistent decline, because you would even find it quite interesting when you look at the numbers. So in December, right, we were at around 34.8%, and then it was a rebase. So January figure was not a decline; it was just a statistical decline. But in terms of in the real essence of headline inflation, it wasn't a decline. It was just like a starting point for us. The first decline that we are seeing now is the one in February, and yes, it shows that it looks like we would be having those forms of moderation, because don't forget, just the impact of the base effect alone is enough to just see these inflation numbers see it down all through the year. And that is also the factor. The fact that the CBN has been rather hawkish in recent time, that also has an impact on inflation. So yes, we should expect to see the numbers gradually decline as the year goes along.
Well, Mr. Oyekomi, thank you very much for your time and expertise on this conversation. Samuel Oyekomi is a financial analyst and researcher at Northern Berger, and he joined us this morning to speak on the inflation figures for the month of February. The National Bureau of Statistics has announced a drop to 23.18%.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.